welcome back to Alfred's Basic Adult Piano Course, Greatest Hits, Level 1. Today's video is Lesson 2, which is going to cover page 3 in our book, the song Edelweiss from the popular musical The Sound of Music. All right, so there's a couple of interesting things about Edelweiss that I want you to know before we start digging into it. One of those things is that the hand position here is going to feel quite unnatural and actually quite crowded. So when you start this piece of music, your left hand is actually going to be in the G position. So that puts your fifth finger on this G, 4 notes below middle C, and then 4 on A, 3 on B, 2 on C, and thumb on D. Your right hand, actually, the first note it's going to play is the thumb on D. Yes, the same D that your thumb in the left hand is going to be sitting on. So it's going to be crowded, and it's not going to feel very natural. Usually in piano, for the most part, we're usually spread apart a little bit or even further. But it's this crowding that sometimes is difficult to deal with. So this is actually a good piece to overcome that and to get more comfortable with that. So I'll get into some of those hand positions and fingerings in more detail in just a moment. The other thing is the melody in this piece bounces back and forth between left hand and right hand. That could be challenging too, because we always want to try to bring out our melody, but usually our melody is in the right hand. Sometimes it's in the left hand. And sometimes you'll have a couple lines where it's in the right hand and then a couple lines where it's in the left hand. But in this piece, it's almost sometimes note for note going back and forth between the two hands. So that's another challenge you will have in this piece. So let's go ahead and dig in. Now, the first thing I like to do is always look at the hands separately. And like I just said, the melody goes back and forth between both hands, okay? So I'm actually gonna kind of look at the melody, after we put our hands together. So as we look at the right hand and the treble clef by itself here, don't even think about melody. Let's just think about notes. We're in 3/4 time, so 3 beats per measure. There are no eighth notes in this piece, so you just have to count 1, 2, 3. You don't have to do the 1 and 2 and 3 and system. So that's going to make things actually a little bit easier. All you have to worry about is 1, 2, 3. The only rhythms in the piece are quarter notes, half notes, and dotted half notes. So that's pretty simple too. So let's just dig in. Now, the first 2 beats in the right hand are quarter rests. So you're going to rest in the right hand for 1, 2, and then you're going to come in with your thumb on D on beat 3. Now in measure 2, you've got 2 notes played together. You've got an F sharp with your 3rd finger, A above it with your 5th finger. And that'll be held for 3 beats. That puts 4 on G in the next measure, and then thumb on D after that. Okay, and that's it for the right hand in the first line. The last 3 measures are just whole rests, which in this case get 3 counts each. You're resting for the whole measure. Measure 7 on the second line is where we pick up. So you just played with your thumb on D. So your right hand's not going to move anywhere. It's going to stay right there. And that's why you've got 2 on E in measure 7. And measure 8, back to the D. Now measure 9, the 3rd measure there, is just like the beginning. Quarter rest, thumb on D on beat 3. Next measure, again, F sharp and A with your 3rd and 5th finger. And then the 5th measure there, 4 on G, and thumb on D. You're going to rest the entirety of the next measure, and then the last measure, quarter rest, once again, thumb on D. Going into our 3rd line, measure 14, thumb on D again. And just kind of walk your way up to 2 on E, 3 on F sharp, next measure is 4 on G. And of course, the next measure is still 4 on G. The measure after that, 5 on A, your 5th finger's there ready to go. Back to thumb on D, and again. Next measure, that'll be 3 on F sharp, 2 on E, and thumb on D. Next measure, the last measure on that line, quarter rest, and thumb on D. Measure 20, the 4th line, 4 on G. Measure 21, 2 on E. back to G. Next measure, fifth finger on A. Back to G with your fourth finger. And the next measure, D and F sharp with 1 and 3. And then the measure after that, just play the D. And the last measure on that line is very much like the beginning again. Quarter rest, thumb on D. Bottom line, measure 26. Instead of an F sharp, it's just F natural, still with your third finger and 5 on A. So you might be thinking, that sounds a little different. Maybe it's wrong. No, it's right. It's an F natural there. Measure 27, the second measure on the bottom line. Look at my 2 and 4. They're already there for E and G. Okay, and then thumb on D. Rest on the next measure. And the fourth measure, you've got quarter rest, thumb on D. And the next measure, you just walk your way on up, hit the D again, up to E, third finger F sharp, and then G, where it says slower, and then the last measure, hit that G again. That's not a tie, that's actually a slur connecting the last 4 measures to play all of that smooth. So that G you will play both times. That covers the right hand. So really at this point, there's not much more to do in the right hand. In fact, because the melody goes back and forth between both hands, you've noticed there's so many rests in the right hand. Often during those rests, that's when the left hand's playing melody. So really what I recommend is just going through those notes and that fingering in the right hand. Don't, 1, worry too much about rhythm, and 2, don't worry about melody. Make sure you play it smooth though, because you can see there's pretty much the entire piece is nothing but legato. It's all smooth. You don't want to be choppy. And dynamics are something you probably want to add also when you get both hands together. So now that we're done with the right hand, let's look at our left hand. And like I said earlier, the G position. You're going to start with 5 on G and 3 on B, playing both notes together. Dotted half note, 3 counts. You're going to hold it for the whole measure. When the right hand enters, don't lift up on your left hand. Keep it down on beat 3. In the second measure, 2 on middle C, thumb on D, back to C. Third measure, back where you started, G and B. Next measure, middle C, down to G, up 1 to A. Next measure, once again, G and B, same fingering. On beat 3, play it again. Last measure, play it again, middle C and D. Second line, back to middle C. Fourth finger on A, third finger on B. Next measure, middle C, and walk your way down to B, A, and next measure, once again, G and B. Just like the beginning, because the next measure is C, D, C, and next measure, G and B. Next measure, middle C. Down a fourth to G, up 1 to A. Last measure, G and B. So this G and B comes around a lot, and every time it's 5 and 3. Measure 14. Look at my fourth and second finger. Right there and there. It's already on the A and C that you're going to play in measure 14. So don't be tempted to move your hand or try different fingers. For some of you, it might feel weak because you're not used to these fingers playing like that yet. In time, they will strengthen. So I challenge you to use the fingers that are already on the keys. So the last beat of measure 14 is a D with your thumb. Next measure, C and D together. And then third finger on B, down to A. Next measure, again, G and B. Next measure, 2 and 4, once again on C and A. So use that fingering right there. Play the same thing in the next measure. And the last measure on the third line, once again, G and B. Now in measure 20 on the fourth line, just play B by itself. You're already on it. Walk your way up to C, D. Now this is a little different at measure 21. You've got G and C. There were a few times you've played C down to G, but now you're going to play them harmonically together. When you go to the third measure on this fourth line, keep in mind where you're playing G and C. If I'm playing G and C down here at the edge of the keys, in measure 22, I got to go to a C sharp with the second finger. So I got to go all the way up if I'm down there. But if I'm playing my G and C in measure 21 here, look at my second finger. I'm just going to move that second finger slightly over to catch C sharp. So that little transition is something to be aware of. Try not to be down here, because then you got to move even further. Try to play up here within the black keys. Now my second finger just barely moves over. And of course my fourth finger should already be on the A. When I play G and C, there's my fourth finger. So in the fourth measure on the fourth line, you got a quarter rest on beat 1, and then 4 on the A, which you're right there, up to B, next measure up to C, and work your way back down to B, A, and here it is again, G and B. Just like the beginning now. In fact, it's not quite the same as the beginning. Measure 26 on the bottom line is a little different. You got B, C, D, and then back to C on the second measure. Third measure, play the C again. Skip down to G, so that melodic fourth. Up to A. Next measure, once again, G and B. Next measure, 4 and 2 on A and C. Last note of that measure, thumb on D. And the last two measures, you're just walking on down to C, B, A, and you end the song with G and B. So the left hand's actually a lot busier than the right hand. It has not only accompaniment, but it has some of the melody. Plus, it has a lot of those harmonic intervals. Fortunately, most of them, though, are this, G and B with 5 and 3, or A and C with 4 and 2. So that is the majority of them. So working the hands separately, the left hand's probably going to take more work. Once you've got them, down pretty good, put them together, which we'll do right now. Now, I'm not going to go into the counting yet because I want to just simply put them together. Show you where the left hand plays, where the right hand plays when they play together. So this layer is all about bringing them together. So we don't have to be so perfect with our tempo and rhythms just yet. You can, but sometimes just getting that glue first when the hands play can be really beneficial. So hand position. In the beginning, in the first measure here, you're in the G position, the left hand. Now you're going to play G and B. But the next thing it plays is your right hand thumb on D. So what you want to do when you start is have your right hand thumb on the D key. Your left hand thumb is going to float just above it. Okay? Now you don't want to stretch too far or move like this or anything, because what's going to happen in measure 2, your left hand's going to play a D on beat 2. So you want to have this kind of motion with your thumbs. You want both kind of hovering over the D key. You don't want to turn your wrists or turn your arms out, because that actually is going to make it harder. That might be the temptation. You're like, my hands are too close. My hands are too close. Again, this is a piece that's good exercise to overcome that. All right. So this is how you're going to start the piece. So first you've got your left hand, G and B. That's going to be for 2 beats. On beat 3, you're still holding it, and the right hand comes in on D. So measure 2 now, both hands play at the same time. Middle C in the left hand, right? Second finger, 3 and 5 in the right hand, F sharp and A. Then continue with your left hand. Third measure, both hands. Okay? And then your right hand moves on beat 3. Now your next measure, it's only the left hand. In fact, the next 3 measures, don't move your right hand. Except, I'll show you when we get there, you're going to have to move your thumb in the right hand. So the left hand continues. 4th measure, C, G, A. Next measure, G and B. G and B, G and B, C, D. So my thumb in the right hand has to be above that D because my thumb in the left hand is going to play it. Don't move these other fingers in the right hand, or don't move too far. I may have, moved my thumb over just a little bit, but it didn't push that second finger off the E key. And you know why that's so important? Look at measure 7. Where's the second finger in the right hand? It's going to play on the E key. Okay, so here's measure 7. Both hands play together on beat 1. Left hand continues. Second measure, both hands play together. Look how close they are right there. So that thumb in your left hand's got to be above or just slightly off. If you have smaller hands, smaller fingers like me, you probably could just move it slight. But again, these other 4 fingers, don't move them. Continuing in that measure, B, A in the left hand, and then G and B in your next measure. Resting for 2 beats in the right hand, come in on the thumb, on D. So this is just like the beginning again. Next measure, next measure, right hand thumb on D. Now come off, the right hand rests in this next measure, so it's all left hand. C, G, A, next measure, G and B for 2 beats. Come in with your thumb on D in the right hand. Third line, both hands together. Again, pretty close right here, so my thumb in the left hand's kind of hanging out there. E in the right hand, and now my thumb in the left hand has to play D, so my right hand thumb has to kind of move under or over. And then the second measure on that third line, both hands. Still got the thumb playing D in the left hand, so my right hand thumb is hanging out. And then measure 16, both hands for 3 counts. Continuing on, we've got both hands on beat 1, and then beat 2 and 3 in the right hand. Next measure, both hands. Thumb in the right hand gets that D, so don't be tempted with the other hand. Last measure, G and B, left hand. Beats 1 and 2. Right hand thumb on D on beat 3. Fourth measure down, both hands. Left hand's gonna play, so keep that right hand thumb above it. Next measure, both hands. And then right hand moves on G. Next measure, both hands. Back to G. Next measure, just the right hand, D and F sharp. Rest on beat 1 in the left hand. Then come in on the A. And then the right hand plays in the next measure that D again, so your left hand thumb is hanging out. You've got C and D together, so it's real tight. And then continuing on. Last measure of the fourth line, G and B. Left hand for 2 beats, right hand thumb on D. Bottom line, remember F natural in the right hand, and the left hand's just walking on up. Next measure, and then right hand thumb on D. Third measure, only the left hand plays, so get off in the right hand. Still off in the next measure. 2 beats in the right hand, then you come in thumb on D. Next measure, both hands. Left hand thumb hanging out, but not for long, because on beat 3, that thumb plays. Now the right hand thumb's hanging out. Last 2 measures, G in the right hand, C in the left hand, and just walking down in the left hand. Hit that G again on the last measure in the right hand. So when you put the hands together, there's a lot of back and forth with the thumb. And, sometimes you may accidentally hit the right note in the treble clef with your thumb from your left hand. It's not the end of the world, of course, and musically, it may not sound, any different. The audience may not know. But for learning purposes, this is a really good exercise of training which thumb plays when and where. So that was going through just, coordinating it all. sort of skimming the rhythms a little bit, but not going in a steady tempo. So now I'm going to play it for you in the steady tempo. I'll give a count off, and I'm not going to count while I play, but I'll definitely give you 3 beats and then start playing. So here we go. Got my hand position. 1, 2, 3. And the very last measure has a fermata, so you can hang on to that for a while. All right, so that was just going through with the steady 3 beats per measure. I did not think about melody just yet. I did not think about dynamics, and this is going to be our last step now. So I do highly recommend that you think about the melody in this piece before moving on to the next piece in this book. It's not that, if you just play it straight through, most people will recognize this. So it's not that it won't be recognized. It's just, again, this is something to further enhance your abilities as a musician. So the words are printed in the music for us. And wherever you see words, that those notes are playing melody. Now, the very first grouping of notes, this harmonic third in the left hand, both notes can't be melody. The B is actually melody, okay? Think about someone singing. They can't sing both notes. This is the note they're singing. Now, I'm not going to go and say, okay, you need to make that B louder than that G, okay? It is possible, and musicians do that, but that is like ridiculously extremely hard. If you just play both notes, the melody will come out just fine. Where you want to back off in volume is places like the second measure. Look at beats 2 and 3. There are no words there. On Edelweiss, here in the right hand, Weiss, that's the melody. And that's being held for 3 beats. This on beats 2 and 3, that's accompaniment. That's like background. So what you want to try to do is make that a little bit softer. So basically what I'm saying is wherever you see words, make that loud. Any other notes where you don't see words, try to make those softer. Now the dynamic at the beginning of the piece is piano, which means soft. So my recommendation is play the piece, the melody, specifically melody notes, at least mezzo piano. You could probably even do it mezzo forte. The notes where there's no melody, make those soft, okay? So if you try to make this melody soft too, piano, it's not going to sing, out very, very much. So, my opinion is maybe mezzo piano is a better way to go. So I'm going to play it for you again. And what I want you to do is not even play along if you're playing along. Listen, watch carefully in the music. The notes that don't have words, you're going to hear that I'm going to play those softer. And I may actually exaggerate this beyond the dynamics I just spoke of, just so you can hear what that sounds like. So here we go. So, yeah, I definitely exaggerated those dynamics a little bit. Certainly it was at least mezzo forte on all the melody notes. But I definitely wanted you to hear that contrast between bringing out melody and backing down on the non-melody notes. And of course, at the very end, I talked about the fermata in the last measure. There's also slower in the measure before, so gradually slowing down. Okay, and then the last thing with this piece is moderately fast, you know, so it's not going to be that slow of a piece, probably about 1, 2, 3. So just, you know, a little bit faster when I just played it earlier. So, but it'll, you know, like any piece in this book, it's a little challenging. It'll take a little bit of time, a lot of practice to get to that point, because the most important thing with this piece is learning to navigate, you know, thumbs and the shifts between left hand, right hand, and back and forth, especially when the hands are so close. So that's probably what you're going to be spending most of your time on. But other than that, that pretty much covers the piece. There's a couple of spots. Third line, fourth line, you can see there's a diminuendo and crescendo and diminuendo. So gradually getting softer and a little bit louder again. So you can have a little fun with that, bringing that out. In measure 21, you know, look at your right hand. There's a crescendo there. So as the notes are going up, it's very typical in music to get louder. So they work well together right there, that crescendo in the direction of the notes in the right hand. All right, so hopefully that's very clear for all you guys how to master this piece. I wish you the best. Again, as always, please feel free to leave any comments, suggestions, questions in the description down below. And I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.